Welcome to The Business Fighter with Henry Penix. Henry has been the CEO, founder, and consultant to hundreds of companies worldwide. He retired a multimillionaire, financially independent at the age of 35. Henry grew up a preacher's son and was thrown in jail 3 times for various altercations. He knows what it means to come from nothing and have to fight his way to the top. Henry is the business fighter who will teach you strategic skills for winning in business and in life. Don't just spectate, participate. It's time to get in the ring.
Hey, this is Henry Penix, the business fighter, coming at you with another podcast. I've got an amazing person today to interview. I had the privilege of reading some publications of a company that her father actually founded so many years ago, and it was like the best thing. I mean, I would wait for it every month to hit my mailbox, and I would get the bottom line on everything, the bottom line on health, finance, fitness, everything. I couldn't wait to read this. And some years later, I found out, and we're going to get into this story, but I found out that he handed it down to her. Her name is Sarah Hiner, and she's running it, owns it, is making it fantastic. And I get the privilege to talk to her today. We get to learn about that. She's coming to us from New York City, and it's just a pleasure to have her on the podcast. Sarah, welcome to Henry, the Business Fighter podcast.
Thank you so much. But I have to, true confession, it's my sister and brother and me. It's not all mine.
Oh, okay. I see. Well,
I want to take all that credit.
I was so excited to talk to anyone. I had to give you all the credit.
But that's how humble I am, because I have siblings. I want to share it all.
Good. Sharing is caring, right?
That is right. I'm very caring.
Good. Well, I've heard only great things about you. You and I have had a couple of conversations kind of off camera. So the way I come to know the magazine publication BottomLine is I used to get it every month. I used to see what the next month was going to hold, and it always had the very best information. And here a few years later, when I found out I could get the opportunity to meet you and ask you some questions, I'm like, wait, let's don't talk about it yet. I want you on my podcast. I want you to drop some of those golden nuggets to my listeners. I have a lot of entrepreneurs. I have some wantrepreneurs that listen to my podcast, and this is going to be an awesome one. So give me kind of the lineage of BottomLine. It was your father that started it, and how long ago was that?
So my father started it. I tell my kids I've been working since I'm 12, because of course children were slave labor in those days.
I know. I did the same with my dad.
Exactly. Right. No life. If you're going to work, you're going to work for me.
Uh-huh.
So it was 1972. You can all now figure out how old I am.
Oh my God.
And he was the world's best salesperson, and he read everything. And he was so frustrated, though, because no matter what he read, and he read all the business publications, he needed the nuts and bolts of what do I do about it. So he'd read Business Week or Forbes, and he'd learn about masters of the universe and big business, but no one helped him how to interview better. No one told him how to, make smarter, just day-to-day decisions. So he started actually a publication called Boardroom Reports, and that was to business people to help them with their business lives. About 10 years later, he started BottomLine Personal, which was to the same person for their personal life. Right. So the nuts and bolts of where should you put your money? How should you, how should you buy a house? Smarts about insurance, whatever it is, not just the headlines, but what do you do about it, and how can you make a better, smarter decision?
And not just anybody could get in. Like, you guys have to vet these, and you put your whole reputation on the line by even letting an article into your publication, because it truly is the best and the bottom line. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I am very proud to say that we, in this day and age of fake news, are double fact checked. We go to the top experts. We have the experts actually review the articles before we publish them to be sure that we've said things in the proper way. And we have our own in-house, on-staff paid fact checkers and researchers that also double check things, because sometimes experts can say something improperly, or when we're filling in the content around it, you want to be sure that you're accurate. So we are fact checked. And again, it's all about action oriented. What can I do about it?
Wow. No, I remember loving it. I remember taking most all of the advice that I read in it, and every time I did, it would be success for me. So I appreciate your family for providing something like that.
I call it 30 minutes to smart, because it's 16 pages long, and the longest article in there is about 1,100 words. It's maybe a page and a half. Nothing's that long. Very step by step. What should I do? And then there are all these little bits and pieces. just one paragraph of quick factoids
Well, it's
that
meat.
you can know.
It's
Yeah,
meat. It's what you can sink your teeth into, and it's what you can
totally.
read and really cause change. So, so you grew up. You at 12, you didn't have a choice. You just worked. When my dad was growing up, he owned a tire company. I used to go down there. I got fired 3 times. I would be working at 6 in the morning until 12 at night sometimes, just to get the job done and all that. So you probably can share in some of those stories. What was going through your mind? And I want to kind of lead up to where you are today in the time that we have. But what was going through your mind as a 12, 13, 14-year-old as you become a teenager and started to drive? I mean, did you know that your dad had created something that big, or how did you view it from the eyes of a 12, 13, 14-year-old?
Interesting question. Well, from the eyes of a 12, 13, 14-year-old and then into high school, all I wanted to do was be a waitress at a diner or work at the ice cream shop.
Yeah.
And right, that's what I wanted to do.
Right.
And he said, no, and my father, who had worked all those jobs and knew how hard they were, said, no, come work for me. It's better, more civilized, etc. I knew the thing that was fascinating about my father, he would come home actually and talk about the people that he met with. And he would tell stories of having had dinner and been close with Peter Drucker, and it was one of his dear friends, and Vasily Leontiev, and Henny Youngman, one of the all-time great comics, one day called up and wanted to talk to my father about business. So he had this world of the smartest people, and he'd come home and tell us stories of who he'd met with and what he'd learned. So I did, I had a feeling early on that there was something fascinating going on. He was never Malcolm Forbes. He didn't live in that world. He was actually kind of understated, which was beautiful, but he loved learning and he loved finding the top people that could teach him anything.
And did you guys live in New York City, or was it close to there, or?
We lived in New Jersey. The business was in New York. We're actually in Connecticut now. We moved out of New York, typical my father. So after the first World Trade Center bombing, my father called all of his experts and said, what's happening to New York? And they said, it's not a question of if, it's when there's a bigger problem in New York. So we moved not to New Jersey. Often people will move to where the founder is. We actually moved the company to Connecticut because it would be a safer place for people, safer commute for people that wanted to stay in New York. And it gave us the opportunity to retain the most people as we transition the company. You can handle, when you relocate, you can handle a loss of people, but you can't handle a major loss of people, especially when you're a smaller company.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. I learned something. So when you got into your 20s, and did you go to college? Give me some of that life of Sarah. Did you still stay attached to the bottom line? What was your life like?
No, I did not know. So I did not necessarily plan on coming to the company. When and if I did, I wanted to be sure that I had outside knowledge and experience to bring to the company. I thought that it would be narrow to only be there. And I did that for 2 reasons, actually. One was just knowledge to bring, an asset to the company. The other was for my own self-esteem and self-confidence. I didn't like being the boss's daughter. I didn't want to come in and say,
anything.
I didn't want to be handed anything. I didn't want anyone constantly evaluating through the eyes of, oh, Marty's daughter's here now.
Yeah.
So I actually went out, I typed my way up through advertising. I worked at Gray Advertising, was my first job. I started as a secretary, took a typing test, started the whole bottom and worked my way up. So I was in advertising for about 8 years in New York, and then out in Colorado, and then back in New York again at Gray and at a couple different boutiques. And then I came to the company.
Let me ask you right there. And I like to drop golden nuggets for my listeners. A lot of people want to be handed something. A lot of people, if they have an opportunity to go to work for dad or get the easy peasy job, a lot of people will take it, especially in this generation. What was different about Sarah? What was the work ethic that you had that probably some of your friends didn't even have? I mean, what made you different?
You know what? I wish I could say it's just my DNA, but I think, something that I've looked at a lot recently, because I look at the millennials and I look at this whole, the drive and what's easy and what's hard. And you have bigger self-esteem, better self-esteem when you face your challenges. I am competitive. I am a fighter. My father would smack me and would spank me when I was little if I was naughty.
I got spanked too.
I got spanked in the old days. No one spanks now. It's corporal punishment. But I would get spanked and I'd laugh at him and would drive him crazy. So For whatever reason, I don't know why at that stage in life, I was just conscious enough to know that I wanted to do it on my own. I did not want to be handed. I was grateful actually by the time I came here that I was married. So that again, with every time I shook someone's hand, it wasn't a reminder that I was the boss's daughter.
Right.
I think it's important. Well, and I think even, when people think about passing their businesses along to the next generation, I think it's important for people to be on their missions. And to, young people shouldn't be on my mission. My children should be on their mission, not on mine, and not feel obliged to me. Because that's when you give it your most, is when it's your passion and your path.
When you're trying to push a square peg in a round hole, it pisses the peg off and it messes the hole up. So.
Well, you're doing it. You're half doing it. You're not doing it for the genuine reason. And frankly, so I've been here twice. I came here in 89. In 2000, I left, frankly. And when I came in 89, I was fed up with advertising. And I was like Dorothy. I was running from someplace I didn't want, but I wasn't consciously coming to the company. My father just kind of said, come here, dear, and it's a great place. And I did a great job there, and I succeeded, and I redid all of our logistics and operations and all sorts of stuff, and grew like crazy. Family businesses are complicated. I left in 2000, and I came back 3 years later, but then it was connecting to my passion to the company's mission in a much deeper way. And it was a far more effective drive at that point in time. And, took me on a different path on that return.
Sure. Now, you growing up being surrounded with greatness, with the Peter Druckers and I'm sure 1,000 other people that were at the top of their game, because you only let the top people into the magazine. Do you think that had any influence, hearing those stories, maybe even subconsciously? Do you think that had influence on how Sarah became Sarah, this badass businesswoman, this fighter, this I'm going to earn it myself? Like, you think some of that trickled through, or do you think it was something else?
I think there was, some of it like inspiring to see these people and to have access to this.
I bet.
But what's really a great irony that I learned being surrounded by these people?
Right.
They're really human. So I had the chance one time, we did for many, many, many years, we had these corporate dinners. We'd invite the experts to the Four Seasons restaurant in New York, and then later to the Modern. And we'd have about 15, 20 of them. And these are these top people in the world.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting one time and I'm next to one of the top economists, and nicest guy. He wanted to talk about his preventive cardiologist and bicycling. Like, you're so human, right? So no matter who they are, they're humans. And that actually was really impactful to me, because it could be really intimidating to be with a Peter Drucker, or to be with a Norman Podhoretz, or whoever. But they were just people. And I think part of my success formula has been that I'm able to treat people as people, and I'm not as, I'm not as fearful of them that I'm in their presence. I press myself.
You took the words right out of my mouth, because so many people today are afraid to go, let's say they're trying to get a loan. They're afraid to go talk to that banker. They're afraid to be in front of a loan committee. They're afraid to, I do zoning changes because I do some real estate work as well. They're afraid to get in front of the board of adjustments. They're afraid. But people are people. They have the same fears. They put their pants on one leg at a time. And we shouldn't fear people. I mean, what you said is so powerful for my audience right now.
Right. But let me clarify this too, because it doesn't mean that I don't respect them and I'm not deferential to them. So I host my own podcast, the BottomLine Advocator podcast. And I'm a preparation maniac, because I'm talking to these top doctors. And sure, I could ask them kind of generic questions, but it's a much better effective conversation when I've done my homework and I understand what's going on with depression or heart disease or, opioid addictions. Sure. So I'm totally respectful of these people, but I treat them like people.
Yeah, that's important, because sometimes you can get too comfortable with someone and not respect them, and that's where you lose every time.
I think so. And I think that there are a lot of people that are out there in this casual world, and where, everybody's first name basis, there's nowhere, even hierarchies in businesses don't exist as powerfully as they used to.
Right.
And I think that people have mixed up the concept of, casual. I'll joke with people and say, don't confuse my informality in business with a lack of professionalism. I'm extremely professional,
Mhm.
extremely
So good.
thorough, but I like to have fun as well. And
Yeah.
you have to understand that difference. And I never treat any expert without extreme respect.
I've been in situations where people have given me access to some of these people, and I've even brought my kids along into some of my meetings that they would normally never be in front of a certain individual. World leaders, kings. I was in front of a king one time, and
Wow.
just all these different people, and I would always be very careful to see how they acted in front of them, to see, well, is this just dad's friend and we can just all just cut up, or is there that level of respect and professionalism? And you need a little of both, but if you're going to err more on the side of being professional and reverent to who you're in front of. Don't you think?
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. Always start, I tell my kids, even, friends' parents, always start out calling them Mr. and Mrs. They will offer to you to call them by their first name.
Right.
But
If
you
they
never
ask
get
it, not you, don't assume
correct.
it.
Yes.
Yeah.
No. You never make a mistake by being too polite.
I love that. You never make a mistake by being too polite.
Yeah.
And a smile. Like you can cut right through so many things just with a smile.
You can. Well,
don't forget to remind your face to smile every once in a while.
It's so basic. Look someone in the eye. I had a young kid that I was interviewing, and we were looking for a college intern, and I'm interviewing the kid, and he wasn't looking at me. He was looking down. And I stopped the interview after a couple minutes and said, whatever happens with this job, let me give you feedback. Look at me. Look me in the eyes. And we ended up hiring him. He did a great job for us. He was with us for about 2.5 years. He only recently left to go be a single guy in New York, as he should.
Right.
But to the young people who are living their lives with their heads down in text messaging need to remember, look someone in the eye, be present, be connected to them, all these basic civilities.
Let me tell my audience right now how important this is to Sarah. So her camera is actually over to one side of her. And she told me, said, Henry, I'm going to be looking at the dot because I want to see your viewers in the eye. I don't want to be looking sideways.
I did. It's
you
true.
are a living example. I love that. Love
confessions. It. Yes, I'm staring at the dot because you're down to my corner. Here, I'll look at you now. There, I'm looking at you. Now
you're not. Well, how do people learn more about you? How do they get a hold of you? You're an amazing person. You're so accomplished, have such a deep-rooted history in getting to the bottom line of things. How do people learn more about that? And can they still subscribe to the magazine? Can they go on a website? Tell me about that.
Oh, good gosh, they can subscribe. Yes. Okay. So we have BottomLineInc.com is kind of the master blaster pathway to everything bottom line. You can subscribe. Bottom Line Personal is a 16-page newsletter. It is print. And I got to tell you, all you screen people, there's something to be said for a piece of paper. And it's portable, and you got it, and you got it. Email flies off your screen. Anyway, so BottomLineInc.com. You can subscribe to Bottom Line Personal, Bottom Line Health. You can get our books. You can listen to my podcast, Bottom Line Advocator, which is also on iTunes. You can go to our store, our wellness store. We have blogs. I write a blog. But that's the pathway, BottomLineInc.com.
Oh, good. Well, I was so happy to re-engage with you and get who would have thunk back when I was, a 20-something and reading that and taking the advice and savoring every word, which you gave me some additional magazines. You sent them. I read every one of them. I gave 3 of them away. So I've got at least 3 more subscribers added to your list.
Excellent.
But they love it. It hasn't lost its relevance, because when you're searching for the truth and you're real, raw, you're relevant and respective. That's got to be something we can do. Real, raw, relevant, and respected.
I love it.
For other people, you're always going to win. And that's what your publication does. And that's the way I see you, Sarah. I appreciate so much you being on the podcast. You've given a ton of information just through some of your personal stories, and those last few things even that you said at the end are golden nuggets that my listeners are really going to appreciate and can learn and grow by. So thank you so much. Henry, the business fighter, coming at you with another podcast. Sarah, hold tight just for a second. I want to talk to you when I sign off. You guys listen to this, and do me a favor. Send this to 10 of your friends. Think about right now, 10 people that you know that could learn something about this, even if it's just to tell them where the bottom line is or where they can sign up for it, go to that right now, because this is real, raw, relevant. It'll change your life. It'll add value to your life. I know this, and it's been vetted by some of the world's best experts. So do it now. Send it to 10 of your best friends. You go online now, check it out, and get to your bottom line in life. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Henry. It's great to talk to you.